Hi, how are you? Hold on 1 second. I'm right here.
Hi.
I'm just putting my 1 second just to put my presentation on. Hold on. Just 1 second. There you go.
Please, Dr. Manami Tanaka will be after Dr. Anat bin Salman.
I can see the 1 second.
Okay.
I can't find the thing. Hold on. Just trying to share. Oh, here. Just 1 second. Oh, it's not really. Sorry for that. Just presentation. Just for some reason, not. Hold on, it's probably my internet. Sorry for that. For some reason. Oh. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Sorry for this delay. And thank you, first of all, for this great and interesting conference. And thanks for inviting me. So I'm the business partner and co-researcher with Ofer, who just spoke. And in some way, maybe our lectures have some connection, because it's no secret that Ofer has been my practical teacher. I was the young professional who he trained for almost 10 years. And I'm going to talk today about parental intelligence. And I think the topic of parent and parenting is having a lot of importance in all our life. And so in different aspects, especially post-COVID or hopefully post-COVID period, it's going to have more and more importance. And what I'm going to talk about today is the actualization within the parents' decision-making processes. What is parental intelligence and what can we do with it? So parental intelligence, I think that the best way to maybe start it is to think about a quote of a professional whose name is Green, who talked about the heat of the moment. There's nothing to speak logical with a black and white child in a gray world. And I think that's what we feel these days regarding the new reality and the new changes that we're going through during COVID and post-COVID all over the world. So I'm Anat and Salmon. I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a parental counselor, I'm a researcher, I'm an instructor, I'm a teaching and training for the past 12 years practitioners, both in parental counseling, couple counseling, family therapy, and psychotherapy as well. I'm a mother of 3. So parental intelligence, in my view, is the parent's awareness to his own self, his history, background, experience, and aspirations. I think that some professionals actually speak about parental intelligence as a way to understand the child. or the children, what's happening with them. In my view, parental intelligence is actually an introspection into ourselves. So this is the connection between Ofer and I in some way, because he spoke about the internal process of the therapist in order to make things better. In my view, parental intelligence is parents' awareness or introspection on a daily basis, to gain a lot of awareness as much as he as possibly can, in order to understand why is he doing what he's doing, what underlies his behavior, his decision-making processes in relation to his children. I worked with parents for last 15 years, and I saw thousands of parents. And one of the questions I ask them when they come is, what is their aspirations for their children, right? What do they want them to be as grown-ups? Like, what's actually, what I'm asking is, what's directing your parenthood? Why do you do what you do? On which base? And most of the people that I've met, and there's a lot of people, were shocked by this question, because, and I don't blame them, because I think that in our busy world and life, we don't stop to think. We just act and we react and we behave and we're trying to solve the daily difficulties. And we forget why we brought children, and we even forget to enjoy parenting as well. And we don't, and when they stopped in session with me, they begin to think what they want and what's actually guiding them. And then something happening, and I'll get back to it shortly. So the parental intelligence is actually a conceptual abstract phenomenon. It has structural mechanism. It has a way to be actually explicated. So we see what directs daily behavior as well, decision-making processes when we face in challenges in parenthood. So that's how we know, right? So we can only see and observe the concrete attributes which are evident in the behavior of the parent, and we see how children react to that behavior. We can also observe our impact of the parental intelligence of ours in children's reaction towards our practices, okay? So if we look at our children, how they react to us, we can actually learn a lot about ourselves if we'll be ready to do it. So actually, when I ask parents, most of the parents, are you reactive or are you initiative? Like, what is guiding your behavior? Most of the parents will say that actually they're reactive. They say, oh, because of the busy morning and because the child won't cooperate, I reacted in a very, very anxious way, or I shouted at my child because he was making me nervous. It was he who made me nervous. Okay, so we actually experience ourselves as parents as reactive to our child, not as a grown-up who actually, in a basic, as a basic assumption that if we're grown-ups, we cannot be the second reacting. We have to be and see ourselves as initiative. As parental therapists, we conclude that parents usually perceive themselves as reactive in nature. Is this possible, actually? How can this be possible? Because it does not make any sense, because we were there first, right? If we brought the children, we cannot be reactive. We have to acknowledge our initiative. So why would we choose to see ourselves as reactive as well? It's interesting, right? Because we feel lack of control and we feel that we don't know what to do. It's because we feel we're reacting. So I think that parents must first of all acknowledge their primal position as mature adults. They are responsible for the setting in which the child was fostered, right? So they brought the child into this world. They're responsible for the setting and for the behavior, first of all, of themselves and their partner, okay? So children, actually, if we just stop and think about this maybe trivial fact, but it's not as trivial as we think, because in fact, in life, we do not pay attention to it. Children are reacting to their parents, not the other way around. If it sounds trivial, let's think again why. So actually, in order to understand it, to be a better, initiative figures in our children's life, in our family, different characteristics of parental intelligence should be acknowledged. So what I gathered from 15 years of research together with Ofer is we have attributes, we have characteristics that actually identify parental intelligence, which we all have, but we have to acknowledge and we have to be aware of it. So we need self-awareness. We have the ability to accept diversity. We have to gain the ability to attune ourselves to other needs. We have the ability to set and sustain boundaries to ourselves in order to make space for others as well, and in order to define ourselves. We have to gain the ability to set goals and act accordingly to them. That's not something that's very easy to gain. And we have to gain ability to let go and to understand that the child is growing and he's different. So parental intelligence reflected in parents' practices on a daily basis, whether we know it or not. So if we talk about self-awareness, we have to need to acknowledge the ability to stop projection. We have to look at our child and remember that what we see is a different person and not what we want to see. Okay, not what we want them to be, but actually a different individual. And for doing that, we have to accept diversity. So the child is not me, my child is not me, I am not my mother. And most of the time we actually act in accordance to our parents and not our children. Whether we want it to be very different from what we experience with our parents, or we want to just to repeat the parenthood we experience, for better or for worse. This is not our child who we attune to. If we talk about attaining to the other needs, then the conflict between my needs and those of my child needs have to be analyzed every time. If we talk about the ability to set and sustain boundaries, is something that we have to understand that we set boundaries. If we talk with people about boundaries, it's a very famous topic, right? We talk about it all the time, and most of the parents say that they cannot set boundaries for their children. Actually, the boundaries we can only set for ourselves, since boundaries is something that defines who we are. Within the boundaries is who I am, my personality, my needs, my aspirations, my fears. So the self is defined by my boundaries, so I can only set the boundaries for myself, and actually to sustain them is on me. It's not my child who have to keep the boundaries or sustain my boundaries. It's me who have to take care of them. If we look at the ability to set goals and act, we have to act and think, reconsider all the time the long-term goals rather than according to immediate needs. So we need to, sometimes we act more often, we actually act upon the immediate needs, whether we want to finish the day and go to sleep, whether we want just quiet evening, or we want to rush in the morning to work. So we act upon those needs and we forget and actually neglect the long-term needs for our child. If we set the needs and we know what we want, let's say, for example, all the parents actually want their child to be independent and responsible grown up when he grows, right? So if we want him to be responsible, we have to let him to do his responsibilities, his chores by himself. But if we look at the immediate needs, so if we're in a hurry, we're doing it for him instead of him. So we actually disturb our own long-term goals and needs. And of course, for the child is something that actually lets his individuality as an independent human being to grow. If we talk about the ability to let go, we have to acknowledge the child as a separate individual and enjoy his different. The fact that he's different from who we are is something very curious, make us curious and happy, and not something that makes us being anxious because of the diversity, because he's different, he's strange to us. So we make him in some way unconsciously, sometimes more consciously, being more like us, or more expecting him to be what we want him to be, instead of actually recognize him as different and get to know him better. So how can we extend our parental intelligence as something that we can do on a daily basis? The ends do not justify the means. There has to be correlation between what we aspire to achieve from our children as grown-ups and measure that we take to achieve it. We most often just forget both of those, and of course not act accordingly. So what we want to do in order to promote our parental intelligence, to develop it better, we have to listen to our partner. Actually, what we see about ourselves is very, very small portion, because most of us act, of course, we have unconscious mind as well. The person who's beside us can see things that we cannot see, and he has a different viewpoint. We can learn a lot from it. And if we listen to our partner, not as somebody who criticizes us, but somebody who's enlightening some point that we cannot see, and from outside, we can actually learn a lot and, of course, increase our awareness. If we look at our child's behavior, we can see the influence of who we are and what we do. They're our best, in my view, the best teachers of our parental profession are our children. They always give us feedback in a very forward way, the unpolished way, right? And if we listen to it, we learn and we grow. Put our mask on us first. As parents, if we're on a plane, who we put in the mask on first? Actually, most of the parents will answer right away, oh, of course, the child, we want to save them. In fact, we have to put the mask on us first in order to help our children. If we won't take care of ourselves, we won't be able to take care of anyone else. So self-care is not something selfish, it's something that we have to do in order to be more aware, more calm, more conscious about our decision-making process on a daily basis as parents and, of course, practitioners as well. There's no difference. And of course, we don't have to do it alone. We have to get professional advice. Parental counseling is about providing that outside about our parenting practices in order to promote them and to make them better. Sometimes what we did worked for us when children were 4 or 8, but it's not working with our teenagers. We have to always refining our practice on a daily basis. And of course, to remember, enjoy our parenthood. Because sometimes we do what we do and we love our children, but we forget to enjoy the parenthood process itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anat Ben Salmon. Any question for Dr. Anat? Any question? Thank you, Dr. Anat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.